We just made $18,500 in just 17 days from this vacant property in Fort Worth, and the lead called us from our radio ad. Let's talk. All right, so a lead called us on our radio ad. It was actually a grandson calling us on behalf of his grandma who owned this vacant house out in Fort Worth. The house had been vacant for 3 years, and prior to it being vacated, it actually went through a lot of fire damage that started in the kitchen and pretty much went from the kitchen to the next bedroom over. It was pretty extensive fire damage on the property. After vacating it, she had left the house for a couple months and just had it sitting there, and then she got a lot of letters from the city about its condition and the fact that she had to do something with the property or it would be condemned. And so she actually started paying out of pocket a contractor that she found. Who knows where she found this guy, but he wasn't an actual licensed contractor, just somebody who was willing to do the work for a little bit of nothing. And so he pretty much scraped the property. He did get rid of the burn damage, kind of changed out the sheetrock, things like that. He had took all of the wiring out of the home and had attempted to put the wiring back in. He had taken out the floor. I mean, the house was completely gutted. So the guy did a good gut job. He just didn't do a good job kind of putting things back together. And that's where things kind of fell apart, because during that process, the contractor she had hired actually passed away. So the seller had given this guy a lot of money up front, which we always advise against if you're remodeling property, but she had given this contractor a lot of money up front. He did do some work, so you couldn't really tell it had burn damage, but unfortunately he passed away about halfway through the process. And so the house was still completely gutted at the time I did my walkthrough. And at this point, the seller just wanted to get rid of the property. The house was in Fort Worth. She now lived in Dallas. She was a single, older lady, getting up in age. And so she just wanted to liquidate the house, not have to deal with the remodel, the letters from the city, people breaking in, or another potential fire or anything like that. She just wanted from under the property, and she wanted her grandson to help her with the process. And so her grandson actually met me at the property. I walked the property, took some pictures, observed the condition. I would say it was about a 4 out of 10. From the outside, it didn't look extremely bad, but on the inside, it was completely gutted. And you can tell that somebody started trying to fix it, but didn't quite finish. The half-ass remodel job is pretty much the same as not remodeling the property at all. The sellers did not have an initial asking price for the property. She just knew that it was in bad condition, and she wanted somebody to go out and give her an offer to see if that's something that could work for her. Now, after walking the property, I sat down with the grandson, shared my observations and my thoughts based on my experience, and let him know that we would be at $80,000 on a cash offer, plus our normal benefits of paying the closing costs, no realtor commissions, and buying the house as is. And he called his grandmother immediately. He called her on speakerphone. We talked about it, dropped the offer at $80,000. She said that sounded good to her, but it sounded like she was still kind of on the fence when he hung up. She wasn't ready to sign the contract that day, but she said that the price sounded good, and she wanted to think about it. We hung up with her, and to kind of seal in the deal, I told the grandson, I said, hey, since the house belongs to your grandmother, I can technically pay you a referral fee for reaching out to me, meeting me at the property, and things like that. So if she decides to sell the house to me at $80,000, I can pay you a referral fee of $1,500 on top of that. So the $1,500 does not come out of grandma's money, all right? This is money that goes directly into your pocket, and then she still gets the $80,000. So even though I gave her my offer and verbally she accepted it and thought that that was a good offer, she still wanted to think on it. So she wasn't 100% sold. However, obviously I could tell that she entrusted her grandson with dealing with this situation, and so I wanted to also convince him that this was not only a good deal for her, but it could be a lucrative deal for him as well if we actually closed on this deal. Sometimes you gotta dangle that referral fee in front of people so they can work on your behalf to get the sellers to go ahead and move forward, and that is exactly what happened in this situation. So the next day, I followed up with the grandson, said, hey, just checking in, seeing how your grandmother felt about that offer and if we can get this process started so she can go ahead and move on to bigger and better things, all right? He said, you know what? I talked to her. She likes the price. I told her there's no need to wait and get a lot of other offers. Plus, I can't continue to keep going back and forth to the property. She can't continue to keep going back and forth to the property, and we just want to go ahead and get this done. I like to think that my $1,500 referral fee offer went ahead and swayed this conversation a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So now we got the deal locked up at $80K, right? Took us about 3 days to find a buyer. We locked in our first buyer at $105,000, which would have given us a $25,000 assignment fee. However, about a week into that transaction, the buyer actually let us know that he was not going to be able to perform in buying the property. So we had to terminate that initial assignment, and it took us another 2 days to find a rebound buyer. But this buyer was only willing to pay $100,000 for the property, giving us a $20,000 assignment fee. Out of that $20,000 assignment fee, as promised, we paid a referral fee to the grandson who brought the deal for us and kind of brokered it on behalf of his grandmother. So that left us with the $18,500 that we were able to take home. Now, because this house was vacant and it only had one owner, there was no mortgage, no taxes, no liens on the property. It was a pretty quick, clear title process, and we were able to lock in a buyer quick, which enabled us to be able to sell this deal in 17 days. Yep, from contract to close in just 17 days. That's a little more than $1,000 a day. That's how I like our deals. Even though all of that sounds good, we did run into a brick wall, all right? Because about a week or two into the process, the grandma called and said, hey, I got another offer for $90,000, so about $10,000 more than we offered her. She was telling me how she was thinking about, getting out of our contract and getting into that one. So I had to go ahead and hit her with a, hold on. We are in a legally binding agreement which obligates you to fulfill this agreement. And if you default on our agreement by backing out with no fault of ours, then I can and will place a memorandum against the property, which is pretty much a lien on your property. So you will be free to sell it to somebody else. But when that time comes, I will have the ability to charge them or you a fee that I see suitable for the work that we have done and based on how much money we could have made had you would not have defaulted on our deal. Now, we have been paid out from a couple of memorandums that we have placed on properties. Those payments have ranged from $5,000 to $10,000, but sometimes they're higher. We've had to pay memos to other buyers from deals we bought, and they have been up to $15,000. Some have even requested $25,000. We just had to negotiate it, all right? And so I did let her know up front, if you default on this contract, the only way I can protect my interest in this deal is by filing a memorandum against you. We kind of went through that whole spiel. I let her know, hey, it's not personal, it's just business. That is how we protect our interest, because this happens a lot. We can't just give up every deal when another buyer comes along and offers you a little bit more money after you have signed on a dotted line. So though we hate doing memorandums, we will do them to protect our interest in the deal. And usually when we put that on the table, the sellers really on back in and say, okay, let's just go ahead and get this done. They don't want any more legal issues. They don't want any liens. They don't want to have to restart the process. And so typically when you put that on the table, they will go ahead and get back on board. But not every time though, all right? So just know that sometimes these sellers might be like, man, screw you and your memo. And we've seen that too. But you gotta, it's like a coin toss, man. You gotta do what you gotta do, but definitely file memos to protect your interest, but only if a seller defaults, all right? Now, if you get a property under contract and you can't perform, you can't find a buyer, you have it locked up too high and you have to terminate, do not file a memorandum. Only file a memorandum if the seller defaults on your agreement. So again, the problems we saw on this deal were the first buyer dropped out, so we had to find another buyer and take a $5,000 hit to our assignment fee. And then another buyer tried to come in and snake us by offering more money for the property than we had it under contract for, even knowing that we actually had the property under contract. I hate when people do that, but that's just the name of the game, which is exactly why we filed memos. And we even have that dialogue in our contract that says that we can and will file a memorandum if the seller defaults. So when we have that conversation with them, it's not new, because I read through our purchase agreements with the sellers and go over those terms before they even execute it. So they already know this, they just disregard it. And then when that situation comes up, I say, hey, look at term number 12 in our agreement. I read through this, but let me read through it again and explain again exactly what it means and what happens if you decide to default. And there we have it. But it's all good, you know what I'm saying? Every transaction comes with its own problems. You just have to be confident, you have to be diligent, and you have to remain professional and resilient in order to get past those speed bumps, which we did in this deal, which granted us $18,500. Now, before I end this video, I do want y'all to get a couple of takeaways from this video, all right? Just in case you missed them. One, if somebody brings a deal to you, always offer a referral fee, all right? It's not your money that you're paying. It's from an assignment fee. So it's all profit for you anyway. Always offer a referral fee, even for family members, all right? Because that can just be the piece of the puzzle that locks the deal in for you. Second, do not be afraid to threaten and move forward with filing a memorandum of agreement. Now, I've heard some investors say, oh, a memo doesn't matter, people can work around them, yada, yada, yada. Well, I'll tell you what, we have filed several memos and we have gotten paid from several memos. So for me, I like to go by experience, not just what people talking about, all right? So I suggest you put that dialogue in your agreement that lets the seller know if they default, you have the option to file a memorandum, explain what a memorandum is, and that can kind of prevent sellers from trying to back out when they get higher offers, because it does happen and it will happen. Lastly, the more motivation, the better the deal, all right? This deal had a lot of motivation. Home was vacant for 3 years. She was getting letters from the city about potential liens they were going to slap on her if she did not fully remodel the house. She had lost a lot of money from the contractor that she paid on the house. And she was just up in age and wanted to go ahead and get rid of the property so she didn't have to worry about any potential hassles or issues arising from dealing with this property again. But there y'all have it, man. That is this week's deal breakdown. That is how we made $18,500 in just 17 days. If you got any value from this video, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification. You know the whole play, man. Continue helping me help others. If you help me with a like, share, subscribe, I can keep dropping off, little breadcrumbs and little gems that hopefully other people in this space can pick up along their journey so they can do deals and make their transactions as smooth as possible. And until the next time, y'all, tap in.